What if there was a podcast that did it all? Sports, politics, world events. Well, that's what we've got. You're listening to C&C Talks.
Hello, I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie.
And welcome to episode 22 of the C&C Talks podcast.
Yep, just a reminder, as we do every week, we release every Tuesday, and we talk about politics, world events, and sports. It is currently Sunday, November 6, 2022, at about 9 p.m. Pacific Time.
Yep, and when you are listening to this, if you are listening to this shortly after it came out, today is the midterms, so we will be discussing that, as well as the latest from Twitter, the unfortunate end to the World Series.
For Colin, anyway.
Sure. The NFL, college football, the absolute disaster that is the Brooklyn Nets, and that's putting it mildly, and a lot more. And we're actually going to start with something that happened that I at least absolutely hate, Charlie, and that is daylight savings time, because we just all switched our clocks back, and I want to know your thoughts on whether it should exist or not.
I think it is the intended purpose of it isn't really bad anymore. It was used to get more sunlight, but the only the goal was save a little bit of power so you don't spend as much money. The money that's spent and that's saved because you're out more in the summer is like $4 a month, I think, or something like that. And one of the biggest negative factors is the 2 Mondays after we switch the clocks are the two of the worst days for accidents, injuries, car crashes, stuff like that. And that's not good. So I think that's one of the reasons that we should probably get rid of daylight savings time.
Yeah. No, so I get the argument. So I think if we're going to get rid of it, we should just stay in daylight time permanently, like not go back to standard time in the winter. And that's currently illegal under federal law. There is a bill that's working to change that called the Sunshine Protection Act, which is just an absolutely stupid name for it, because there's not actually any more sunlight, as literally anybody except for a U.S. senator would seem to know. But no, I'm against it. We should just be permanently in daylight time. Changing the clocks just bleh. I wouldn't completely mind. Like, I don't completely mind the fact that it's different in winter and summer, but having to actually go through the process of changing the clocks is the deal breaker for me.
Yes.
Yeah, we can live within it being dark for a decent part of the morning in the winter. That's,
yeah.
I feel like, reasonable. And yes, and it would be kind of late, but also the sun sets really late. By the time that I get home from school most of the time, it's pitch black outside. So.
And when this episode releases, the midterms are when this are supposed to. Our episode's supposed to come out when the midterms are happening on Tuesday. So if you're listening to this and you haven't voted, go vote. There's house races for the House of Representatives all over the country, and the Senate and gubernatorial races in certain states. So the polls close at 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. which is 4 p.m. Pacific time. In Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont, the competitive races there are both in Georgia in the Senate and for the gubernatorial race in that state. 7:30 p.m. Eastern and 4:30 Pacific in North Carolina, Ohio, West Virginia, and the competitive races there are the North Carolina Senate race and the Ohio Senate race. 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific for Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Tennessee.
That's a long list.
Yep, and the competitive races there are the Florida Senate seat, New Hampshire Senate, Pennsylvania Senate, and Pennsylvania Governor.
Yeah, and when creating this list of competitive races, I made the decision to say that the Florida governor's race is no longer really competitive. Ron DeSantis is going to win that race, but I think it's going to be interesting and consequential to see how much he wins that race by, whether it's just a few points or whether we're talking double digits, which is possible. A, for what that means for the future of Florida politics, and B, for a potential Ron DeSantis presidential run in 2024, which we know that he's thinking about.
Yep. And then the polls close at 8:30 Eastern and 5:30 Pacific for Arkansas. There are no competitive races there, and that's just Arkansas. And 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific for Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, New York, New Mexico, North Dakota, and South Dakota, Texas, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. And the close races there are Arizona Senate and Governor, Colorado Senate, Kansas Governor and Michigan Governor, and Wisconsin Senate and Governor.
Yeah. Meanwhile, at 10 p.m. Eastern Time and 7 p.m. Pacific Time, polls close in the states of Montana, Nevada, and Utah. The competitive races in those states, both really in Nevada. Nevada Senate race and the Nevada governor's race, some big opportunities there for Republicans to get some flips. Meanwhile, at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Pacific Time, polls close in the states of California, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. And really the only competitive race there is in Oregon, their governor's race, where the Republicans have a surprising chance to actually flip that governor's seat. It's actually probably likely for a variety of factors.
Well, I would argue there is another competitive one. I think that the Washington State Senate seat might be close.
Sort of. I mean,
it's not
I'm really
super likely that they're.
I'm really using the term competitive to mean either both candidates have a legitimate shot at winning. I don't think that Tiffany Smiley has a legitimate shot at winning that race.
I think it will be surprisingly close. I don't know that the Republicans will win necessarily, but I do think it will be closer than people are thinking it will be.
Yeah, I agree with that, but the problem is it's Washington. There just are not enough Republicans in Washington.
Yes.
Meanwhile, at 12 a.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Pacific Time in Hawaii is where polls close, and at 1 a.m. Pacific time, 1 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. Pacific Time, the polls close in Alaska, where neither of those states really have any competitive races, or at least in terms of Senate or governor's races. In Alaska, there is actually a really competitive House race that is worth keeping an eye on, but I think that we should know probably probably sometime in the 10 p.m. Eastern hour, 7 p.m. Pacific time hour.
And that is the only House seat in Alaska.
Yeah, but no, I think that we should know in like the 10 p.m. Eastern hour which party is likely to have control of the House, although it might take longer because we know that results may take a little while longer. Think back to 2020, and again, that's a completely normal thing that happens. It's just because various states have different rules for how they count their ballots.
And depending on who wins, we may have some people contesting the results.
Yeah, and also in Georgia, again, just as we saw in 2020, in their Senate race there, if neither candidate is able to get to 50% of the vote, as is likely, then there will be a runoff. They changed the election rules in Georgia so that runoff will now take place in December, but instead of at the beginning of January. But we may have another runoff in Georgia that would decide control of the U.S. Senate. So our plans for our coverage is that we are going to be providing live updates on our Twitter feed. We will not be live streaming election results. We also we will likely have a results special out on Thursday morning. Stay tuned for more details about that on Wednesday. We'll let you know.
So, Colin, what are your predictions for the Senate and the House in this upcoming election?
So the Senate, I don't see the math for the Democrats to gain seats. And gaining seats would matter because we know that they have a couple of moderates who are not willing to go along with everything that they that the Democratic Party really wants to accomplish in the Senate. So I don't see a situation where the Democrats are able to net seats. I think that they'll still probably keep the Senate. I think that they will likely hold on to just those 50 seats. I think that they'll lose a seat in Nevada. I still have them picking up that Pennsylvania seat, although really that Pennsylvania seat could go in either direction.
And I think the key of this entire election, can the Democrats hold in Georgia?
Yeah, can the Democrats hold in Georgia? Well, and then the House also. But here's the thing. I don't think people realize just how close everything is right now, right? A half-point swing in either direction, that's probably going to change which party gets the House, which party
And that will change the next 2
wins
years
the
of American
Senate.
history.
Yeah, it 100% will. It's so consequential, and that tiny amount is gonna do it. So again, this is why it's so important to vote. So make sure that you do that. Charlie, what are your thoughts on what we're likely going to see?
I think it is very likely that either Pennsylvania or Georgia flips and the Republicans do gain control of the Senate. And I don't think there's really any way for the Democrats to win the House. I just don't think it's possible. I think they're going to win more than people think they will, but I think they are going to come up just short.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we're going to see the type of swing that we generally see in midterm years, right? Under Trump, there was a 40-seat swing approximately to the Democrats. Under Obama in 2012, it was a lot more than that. It was more than 60 seats. So I don't think that we're going to see anything drastic like that. And I think that that's mostly because of really what the Republican Party wants right now is just not supported by anywhere close to a majority of the American population. But I still think that they probably are going to take the House. Yeah.
And in news that surprises absolutely no one, Twitter is collapsing on itself. They are rapidly losing advertisers, and Elon Musk has fired half of the employees at Twitter. Could we get some more on what's going on there, Colin?
Okay, so I think that the appropriate language to use is language that our producers would have to bleep me for, so I'm not going to use it. I was going to say, I'll say it slightly more politely. It was a crap show. Elon Musk is, I thought he was a good businessman. I mean, he has a couple of good companies, but he's running a master class on how to run Twitter into the ground. Like you said, losing advertisers, and he's fired half of his employees before realizing that, oh wait, the people there, who would have thought, most of them actually probably had jobs that were important to keep Twitter running. So he now wants to hire a lot of them back, which most of them are not inclined to do.
And Musk has now claimed that free speech and comedy are now legal on Twitter, which, well, they were to begin with, but I don't know why he's saying this now. And what he's essentially done is just allowed people to even more so now begin ranting their crazy opinions on his platform.
Yeah, and especially filled with hate speech. But really, I don't think that comedy and free speech are actually allowed because this Sunday night he drew a pretty firm line when he banned Kathy Griffin for creating a Elon Musk parody account. So that's very interesting, and we're gonna definitely keep an eye on what else Elon Musk does to completely bring Twitter down, because I don't know what he wants it to be, but it's definitely changing for the worse, and especially with Monday launching the $8 a month Twitter Blue service, which will allow literally anyone to be verified, which just completely takes away the point of verification. It's just it's stupid. That's all I'll say about it.
And we have a couple of announcements. our election results special. We will try to post it on Thursday, and we'll have we'll announce that on Twitter on Wednesday night. Speaking of Twitter, well, if Twitter still exists by Wednesday.
It's no certainty.
And the C&C Talks 5 will be launching after Thanksgiving, and we'll announce a premiere date next week at 7 a.m. Pacific Time, exclusively on YouTube. It's everything you need to know about the day prior in 5 minutes. It will be about 3 to 7 times a week. And just a reminder, you're listening to the C&C Talks podcast.
Yeah, Charlie, you know what I just thought of what we should do is we should start a live stream of a head of lettuce, and we should see if it lasts longer than Twitter or not.
That's a good idea. I thought you were going to say Sunak, but yeah, that works too.
Well, Sunak, I think might actually last.
I hope so.
All right, let's move on to sports, and we're not letting Charlie do this one because he has some very controversial opinions on this. The Astros have won the World Series 4-2. Hold for booze.
They have won the series 4-2, and Jeremy Pena, the rookie, has actually won the World Series MVP. And Colin, as you can tell, is not very happy about that.
No one really is.
I am.
I don't count you.
Just a series recap. We started in Houston with the Phillies winning Game 1 and Houston winning Game 2. And then in Game 3, the Phillies actually destroyed Houston by hitting 5 home runs and winning 7-0. The Astros then responded by no-hitting the Phillies in Game 4, 5-0. And then after winning Game 5, the Astros took a 3-2 lead and then won Game 6 to win the series. So, how does their cheating scandal in 2017 affect this series win?
Yeah, so I still kind of have a difficult time calling this victory legitimate because, I mean, let's first of all admit it. The Houston Astros are a good baseball team.
Yep.
They are. They have been a good baseball team for the last several years, right? That's the only way to get to 6 straight American League Championship Series. That's a fact. But also, if the league had actually come down and punished the Astros for their cheating scandal back when it was discovered at the end of the 2019 season, they would not be in the position that they were today, where they would still actually be contending for World Series.
But,
right?
like,
That team would just look completely different.
But if they'd been punished, what would the punishment have been?
Well, likely some suspensions, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
the players just completely got away with it. There was no punishment whatsoever.
But by this point, they would have had all their players back, and they may have lost a draft pick, so they may have lost Pena, but then they probably wouldn't have gotten rid of Correa.
Well, first of all, they would have had to get rid of Correa because he chose to sign elsewhere. But, right, it's not like they voluntarily gave up Carlos Correa. But I just have a much harder time seeing them being able to keep that team together if there had been cheating like that. If there had been suspensions like that, I'm not even sure that the players would still be playing at the quality that they were right now. Would there be suspensions?
But my thought on it is, can you blame Houston for the league not doing anything? Yes, they cheated, but the league didn't do anything about it.
I mean, no, it's a fair viewpoint, and I think that the league, right? This is on the league, and it's a stain on baseball.
Yeah.
The fact that they just did literally nothing about it is a stain on baseball. And let's also mention, this was a very good World Series.
It was.
This was a very good postseason in general. But
this was a great season.
It was a phenomenal World Series. Just every game was just very high quality. It's exactly what the league needs in order to be able to build up fans. So,
I mean,
no, it was good.
This was just an amazing season in general, considering that the season almost didn't happen. The lockout. Do you remember that back all those months ago?
I do, and it seems that Astros fans remembered as well, because they still found plenty of time to boo Robert Manfred as he was handing their owner Jim Crane the Commissioner's Trophy on Saturday night. So move on to Week 9 of the NFL season, and boy, was it an exciting week. And we have lots of thoughts, so we'll get right to them with the Seahawks and the Cardinals. Seahawks defeated the Cardinals, now hold a 2.5 game lead in the NFC West. A 1.5 game lead in the NFC West over the 49ers, 2.5 game lead over the Rams. Geno Smith, he's continuing his potential MVP bid. He was October Player of the Month. Kenneth Walker was October Offensive Rookie of the Month, and Tariq Woolen the October Defensive Rookie of the Month. So
Yeah, I really
what are your
think
thoughts on this team?
I think really the key to the Seahawks' success so far this season has been their ability in really clutch situations to just come out on top. I think a great example of that actually happened in the game today against the Cardinals with the first half winding down. The Cardinals are moving up the field. Kyler Murray breaks free, rushes up the field, and then Neal punches the ball out and forces the fumble, and that prevents.
Did he really punch the ball out though, or did Murray just drop it?
It seemed to. I didn't see the full play. I saw a little bit of it, and then left to go do something else. But it did seem to me like he did have an effect on the ball coming out.
Yeah. But also the Cardinals just do not seem like a very good team to me. But also let's not let that take away from the Seahawks and what they've been able to do over the last month. In the last 6 games, they're 5-1. They've won 4 straight games, including some just huge wins against the Chargers and the Giants, both really good teams.
And the Cardinals twice, right?
And the Cardinals twice, although again, I have thoughts on that team, and most of them revolve around the idea that Cliff Kingsbury should be fired.
In other NFL news, the Eagles just continue to roll. They beat the Texans on Thursday night, and they are improved to 8-0. Are they the best team in the entire league right now?
In the NFC, yes. The AFC is still just better, and the Eagles haven't really played enough of the AFC for it to show.
If you look at this week, though, the Bills didn't look all that good. They lost.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs didn't look great either.
But no, the Eagles are a good team. The Eagles are, I'll say right now, they are the favorites to come out of the NFC and go to the Super Bowl. They just are. NFC is interesting because there are actually a few really good teams. We'll get to
Minnesota.
that in a sec. It's just that there's a couple of really good teams, and then everyone else just sucks.
Yeah, pretty much.
But the Eagles are very good, and I'll say that I did not think that Jalen Hurts was going to have a great year this year. I was proven wrong. I've been proven wrong on a lot of things this season. Not as many as Charlie has, but I've been proven wrong on numerous counts this year.
Oh yeah, by the way, just an update about that. I already paid my friend for that bet. I just gave up.
No, that's completely fair. We'll get to what the Jaguars did today in a minute.
Yeah.
But so the Dolphins beat the Bears. Are the Dolphins still a playoff team, Charlie?
I think it's possible. It just depends on what the other. I think really, if the Dolphins continue what they're doing, it will really just depend on how other teams factor in. I think the Patriots may be able to go on a run. I think that the Jets continue what they're doing. They're going to make it in. Chargers continue to do all right. I think they'll make it in. The Dolphins are going to have to work, but I do think they might sneak into that 6th or 7th seed.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. The Dolphins would have to be a wild card. And to be a wild card in the AFC right now,
I mean, not necessarily. They're 1 game back of Buffalo, and they have the tiebreaker.
No, it is true. It is true.
I mean, that's true of the Jets.
It is true of the Jets as well. Of course, that tiebreaker could change, though, because both the Jets and the Dolphins have to play the Bills again this season, and that has to be in Buffalo. That's going to be on the road.
Yep.
The Bengals beat the Panthers with Joe Mixon, 5 rushing touchdowns. Just insane. Are the Bengals back on track, Charlie?
Having 5 rushing touchdowns looks good. But real quick, it was the Panthers.
Yes.
So I would say, yes, they got a win. They're looking like they're better. But you should be beating the Panthers.
And to their credit, they beat them by over 20 points, did they not?
They did. They beat them. But I mean, think about it. If they hadn't had Joe Mixon, they would have lost. They
Yes.
didn't look great in the second half. They were amazing in the first half of that game, and then they just didn't do anything in the second half, and let the Panthers start to get back into it. The Panthers, who don't have a coach, don't have a defense, and don't have an offense.
Yeah, and that's pretty much like all of the teams. So,
Yep, the only thing they have is Pinheiro.
yep. But let's move on to the Lions, who they beat the Packers. And Charlie, I'm gonna let you talk more about the Packers because it's really entertaining when you do. So I'll pose this one quick question to you, which is, do they have any playoff hopes whatsoever?
I was sitting on my couch watching some of the games go by in the last 2 minutes because I knew I had to walk my dog. I'm sitting on my couch. I'm watching Aaron Rodgers try to march downfield, and I'm just thinking to myself, how is he gonna mess it up this time? And I knew he was gonna do it. There was no way that the Packers were actually gonna win the game. And lo and behold, they didn't win. I was right. The Lions actually did something for once, and the Packers are not gonna make the playoffs. They're done, and they're gonna be dead last in the division by the end of the year.
Okay then. I don't know if that's gonna work out, but
The
I'll agree.
Lions are gonna finish ahead of the Packers, and so are the Bears.
You know what? I'm not even gonna doubt you on it because you're probably not wrong.
I mean, haven't we said that for every single one of my opinions, and then come back the next week and I'm looking like an absolute moron?
Yes. Also, though, the Packers are.
I mean, let's look at their last few weeks. They
No,
lost
it's
to
a
the
disaster.
Commanders. They lost to the Jets. They lost to the Giants. The Buffalo loss wasn't bad. They were really supposed to lose that one. And then they lose to the Lions.
And Aaron Rodgers throws 2 goal line interceptions.
Yeah, and he threw 3 during the entire game.
Yeah, no, it's just a complete disaster. They're just
And the Lions don't even have Hawkinson anymore.
Yeah, no, it's pathetic.
My thought is if you can't beat the Commanders and you can't beat the Lions, who can you beat?
Probably no one.
I'm gonna have probably my favorite moment of the NFL season in the later half of the season when the Packers reconvene with the Vikings. That's gonna be a fun game to watch.
It will be. Meanwhile, in other upset news, the Jets beat the Bills, but is this really that big of an upset? I mean, could the Jets actually legitimately make the playoffs? It sounds crazy, the New York Jets, but could they make the playoffs? And furthermore, is it cause for alarm for the Bills, Charlie?
I mean, not necessarily. Josh Allen didn't look great. He threw 2 interceptions, didn't have a touchdown, and he seemed to be holding his arm a little bit at the end of the game. So if he is injured, that's a huge problem for the Bills. I don't think it's a huge concern for them yet. They had that slip up against Miami a few weeks ago, and they rebounded from that just fine. I think they should rebound from this. But as I said, if Allen is out, that's going to be huge, and I think that could end their season.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the MVP favorite in Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So meanwhile, the Vikings beat the Commanders, and they're now 7-1. They're the second best team in the NFC, and we know how weak the NFC is. So how far could they go?
That's a really good question. I think Philadelphia isn't that their only loss this season?
Yeah, Philadelphia is their only loss. Now, that happens to be against a team that they very well could meet in the playoffs, so that maybe doesn't quite bode well for them. But still,
I mean,
they beat
also
everyone else.
the Commanders made it close actually,
Yes, they did.
which could be a concern for the Vikings. But they just added Hawkinson.
Yep.
They already have Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook. So the question is, can they prevent Kirk Cousins from choking in the playoffs? If they can do that, I could see them making it to the NFC Championship, where they'll probably lose to Philadelphia.
Yeah. It actually was not that long ago, just 5 years ago, that these two teams did meet in the NFC Championship in Philadelphia.
And then Philly went on to beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl right after that.
That is correct. Meanwhile, I'm gonna have some thoughts on this one. Jaguars beat the Raiders. The Raiders have now blown 3 leads of at least 17 points this season. The entire rest of the league has 2 such instances. So,
Are the other ones the Ravens?
I cannot recall off the top of my head who the other 2 were.
I
But
think they had one against the Dolphins, but that's beyond the point anyway.
yeah, and right, the rest of the league has only blown 2 games. 2 games of 17 points or more. The Raiders have blown 3. Right? I said that they probably weren't going to make the playoffs at the beginning of the season just because of how stacked the AFC is. I
Yeah.
had them being third in their division though, and I had it being close. Right? This just looks like an absolutely terrible team. Right?
I mean,
straight up, this team just looks bad. They probably going to finish behind the Broncos, which is a feat that I genuinely did not think was possible.
Yep.
But they're probably going to finish behind the Broncos. They're just a complete disaster. Yeah.
There are 2 battles going on in the AFC West. The battle for the lead and the battle of who is the worst franchise in the league. Never mind, that's the Texans, but anyway, in the West.
Yeah. No, it's frankly sad. We've said I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, we said that this is a team that was probably starting to figure it out. No, we were wrong.
We
No,
were wrong again.
They're not figuring it out. They just flat out suck. Right?
But
And I don't know how they flat out suck. They have some really good pieces. But the fact of the matter is that they flat out suck.
Yep, and the Buccaneers beat the Rams. Tom Brady finally gets a win. Are the Buccaneers back on track?
No. They looked bad. They had a good drive at the end of the game. That is the type of thing that could be a momentum builder. But no, they looked bad. They just looked bad. But so did the Rams.
Who looked worse?
The Rams.
The Rams. I don't know what is happening to them.
This is frankly fairly unprecedented for Super Bowl champions. Defending Super Bowl champions.
We're in week 9, and I think the main question that we have to ask with them is their season over? Are they done?
I mean, right, here's the thing about the Rams is that we know what they're capable of. And we know what they're capable of because they've won a Super Bowl as recently as last year. They basically have the same team. A couple new pieces that made them better, a couple pieces that left, but they basically have the same team. And it's a good team, so I don't know what's causing them problems, but they should be able to put it together, and they're not yet.
I think probably
I still think it's possible that they could put it together, and they're 2.5 games back in the division, but that's a lot less scary when you consider that they still have 2 games to play against the Seahawks. So if they can win both of those games, then yes, they'll be in good position.
But can they?
I'm not sure.
I mean, I think probably their main problem at the moment is Stafford. He's just not looked good. His touchdown to interception ratio is 8-8.
Yeah, and let's also remember, right? Like I thought maybe like they had a bye week when they were 3-3. I thought, okay, they're probably going to sort things out here. Right, they're 0-2 since their bye week. Their losses were to the 49ers and the Packers. I mean, those are at best good teams. They're not great teams. They're at best good teams. And they've lost to both of them. So, yeah, I think it's time to be concerned. I wouldn't declare their season over yet, but it's concerning to say the least.
Yeah, if we can pair his stats from this year and last year, the touchdowns, interceptions. Last year he threw 41 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and so far this year he's thrown 8 touchdowns and 8 interceptions.
Yep.
I think Stafford, if they could fix whatever problem Stafford has, I think they could start to make a run.
Yep. Well, Ravens and Saints on Monday night football. We do not yet know the results because it's happening after we're taping. But some other scores. Chiefs beat the Titans in overtime on Sunday Night Football. Actually, the fourth game on Sunday that ended in a final score of 20-17. Charlie, that's interesting. The Chargers beat the Falcons and the Patriots beat the Colts. And let's move on to college football, where
That Chargers-Falcons game was one of those other 20-17 games.
correct. But yeah, college football. We finally found out kind of what was in the selection committee's mind. They made the decision to rank Tennessee number one, which is different from the AP poll, which had Georgia at number one. Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson were the top four. They put LSU in the top 10. And let's say I agreed with some of their decisions entering the week. I disagreed with some of them, like having LSU at number 10. But they, for the most part, looking back on it, they pretty much got it right because there were some very interesting games this week. Charlie, tell us about some of them.
Yeah. I think probably the most anticipated game going into this week was a 1 versus 3 match between Georgia and Tennessee. And Georgia came out on top in that one. Then they will most likely be the number one team at the end of this. Ohio State, who is the second number 2, is the other possibility there. And number 10, LSU beat Alabama. This is Alabama's second loss, and most likely ends their hopes of making the college football playoffs this year.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
unranked.
Notre Dame beat Clemson, number 4 Clemson. So that probably ends Clemson's hopes, right?
And
they don't have a strong enough conference schedule.
That game was not close either.
No, it was not. Number 24 Texas beat number 13 Kansas State, and Michigan State, unranked, beat number 16 Illinois. Yeah, so new CFP rankings come out on Tuesday. So Charlie, what are you thinking about the playoff? We're just a few weeks away from the end of the season.
I'm putting Georgia number 1, Ohio State 2, Tennessee 3, and I don't know, probably Michigan 4.
Yeah, and is that how you think the season will end, or is that just what you think right now?
Currently, because I mean, we could have chaos always happens in college football. We could see something random happen. Georgia could lose. We could see Michigan falter again. We could see Tennessee just after the loss to Georgia, they could go backwards.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I think those are the top 4 teams.
Yeah, so when looking at the playoff at the end of the season, I think that TCU actually has a really good shot because I think the rest of their schedule is not too difficult. They might have some trouble in the Big 12 championship game, but I think that they likely get to 13-0. And if they get to 13-0, it's going to be basically impossible for them to be left out of the playoff. And right, because Ohio State and Michigan play each other. One of those teams has to lose. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if Georgia or if somehow Tennessee manages to come out of that East Division in the SEC, if they lose in the SEC championship game to to the other team, whether it's Alabama or Ole Miss or LSU. But yeah, let's move on to the Brooklyn Nets, because that's just a chaotic franchise right now, Charlie.
Yes. They've suspended Kyrie Irving following his promotion of an anti-Semitic film. He would not apologize for that, and he refused to say whether he held anti-Semitic beliefs. The organization has called him unfit to play basketball for their organization. He's been suspended for at least 5 games, most likely more, and Nike has cut all ties with him for shoes. And they fired their coach, Steve Nash. Result of this follows a terrible result so far. They're 2-5. And he has not led his team deep in the playoffs, and his tenure has been marked by various incidents inside the building. Ben Simmons and Harden just haven't been working out. Durant's demanding a trade. Irving's controversies. It's just been an absolute disaster.
You know, they won 1 playoff series over under Steve Nash, and frankly, this lies on Kevin Durant. I mean, Steve Nash, I don't think that he's just a great fit to be a head coach, but So remember, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving also, they pretty much said, we want this guy as the coach because he's basically going to let us draw up all the plays, right? And that's what they wanted. That's what they got. It didn't work. Shocker, right? And they did the same thing with the general manager also. Okay, we want someone who's just going to let us make all the decisions, let us basically be the GM. They got what they wanted. It didn't work out. At what point is that going to stop, right? Because I feel like the Nets are just caving to, and I really hope that organization just stops standing for that. That's why there's this much dysfunction inside that franchise.
I can't believe I'm saying this. If this continues, can they survive as a franchise? They're just imploding on themselves at this point. If this continues, can they keep it going?
They won't be good for a long, long time, is my prediction.
As a person in Seattle, I'm desperately hoping for them to collapse so we can get a team.
Oh, you want them to move here?
No, I just want them to fold so they have 29 teams, which is unbalanced, so we get a team.
I don't think that's very likely, but you never know.
Sorry, New York fans.
But the Nets likely, the coach that they're likely going to hire is Ime Udoka, who led the Celtics to the finals in his first year as their coach last year, but he was suspended by the Celtics this offseason for workplace misconduct. He had a consensual relationship with a female staffer. I would guess that there was more to it than that because that alone does not seem worthy of a suspension. He also was an assistant coach in Brooklyn for the 2020 to 2021 season. Meanwhile, Dan Snyder, oh boy.
He's finally selling the Commanders.
Finally. It's time. Well, he's exploring a sell. He's had a lot of controversies. Talk about them.
Yes. There's been toxic workplace culture. Led to a congressional investigation into the team. He's tried to dig up dirt on other owners and the commissioner,
which is definitely gonna go over well with them.
He has a criminal investigation into him. He's just another disaster. I think he saw what the Nets were doing and thought, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah. You know who actually wants to buy the team right now is Robert Griffin III.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah. Edwin Diaz has re-signed with the New York Mets on a 5-year, $102 million contract, which is the most for a relief pitcher ever. So, man, Steve Cohen, he wants the Mets to win, and I still don't think that they're going to win because they're the Mets and they're never going to win. But
man, what are we doing in New York today?
I know, but also it's the Mets. We know who the Mets are. And frankly, I think that Steve Cohen's a decent owner. Like, an owner should be paying a lot of money to make their team the best it to be. You shouldn't be an owner if you're not willing to do that. But I mean, it's also kind of annoying when you're not a fan of that team to see that happen.
And for the first time in their franchise history, LAFC has won the MLS title. And that was they actually won it on penalties.
Yes.
And the Portland Thorns win the NWSL title. It's their third title in their franchise's history. So, Colin, we have some news from the Powerball jackpot.
Yeah, the whole world of Powerball. You might want to buy a ticket. I mean, it might actually be too late when this episode's out, but because the drawing for the Powerball was Monday night.
We do not encourage people who are not allowed to do this to do this.
Correct. We also don't really encourage anyone to do this because
it is a bad idea.
It's probably not going to work out financially for you, although there's a very high reward right now because the jackpot's at $1.9 billion, which is the highest ever for any sort of lottery game. The actual cash value sits at just under $1 billion, so the IRS is getting some money, in other words. But yeah, I really hope that we're not sitting here next week talking about how the jackpot is somehow like $100 billion. But
See, here's what
it's
you do.
possible.
You win the jackpot and you buy the Washington Commanders.
Okay, you know what? You might be onto something. That's gonna do it for us. Make sure that you vote if you have not yet. Go to vote.gov to learn how to vote and to register to vote if it is not too late to do so for this election in your state. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. We have episodes coming out every single Tuesday, available anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. Also, make sure to visit our website, cctalks.net, which has everything that you might need to know about the show. Also, call us with your questions, 360-389-2630. Again, that's 360-389-2630. Go ahead and leave us a voicemail. Also, follow us on Twitter while it's still alive. It's at C&C Talks Podcast. For our producer Morris, our production designer Zack, and our co-writer Drake, I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie. Go Astros.